Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman for No Spin Rodeo. No politics, no BS, just hard-hitting news and rodeo commentary from two of the most trusted sources in our sport. Kendra Santos, Tommy Joe Lucia. Listen up. Here we go.
Good almost June afternoon, everyone. I'm Tommy Joe Lucia. Welcome to episode 60. If you're watching us live, thanks for watching us. We're starting to gain a pretty good audience live, and we appreciate all of you watching us live. It's a sunny day in Texas, and I think I'll introduce, like I do always, or welcome you guys back. Of course, we have Kendra Santos, the co-host of this amazing news show and commentary, and Greg Teagarden, who's our producer. One of them's in California. Both of them are in California. You both are in the same time zone. How are you guys today?
I'm great, thank you. I just got back home from Texas, and it's beautiful on the Central Coast as usual. I've been back and forth twice in the last week, so.
And Greg, you're at your second home, which is an announcer stand somewhere in the United States.
Actually, I think I'm just down the road from Kendra. I'm in Santa Maria, California. Yep. Get ready to do the Elks Rodeo.
That is a great rodeo, and there's the largest strawberries I've ever seen in my life there. They're the size of Texas cantaloupes.
They are pretty big. I bet they're delicious.
Unbelievable. And they are delicious.
The beauty of in Santa Maria and in Salinas is that they're grown there. So when you go to those two rodeos, the cowboys get spoiled by these picked this morning. So vine ripened strawberries are a whole different animal than what you find at your local grocery store if they're not local to you. And they're so sweet and delicious. So.
Well, we've got an interesting episode for you, and I'm gonna kick it, basically turn it right over to Kendra, who's going to take us all through the Roy Cooper tribute through her eyes. She went and was a part of that. Lots of friends and family and people you love there, and so I think it's fitting for those of you that didn't get to attend and some of the highlights from that celebration of life of Roy Cooper. So I'm going to step back a little bit, just like you, all of you. I'm going to listen. And Kendra, walk us through your experience celebrating the life of Roy Cooper.
Okay, well, so I certainly won't try to blow by blow the situation, but I am so, I wouldn't have missed it, and I'm so happy that I didn't. And we do have a few pictures, so I could kind of share, a few little video clips to kind of share. It's hard to wrap your arms around it in words, such a, in a way, bittersweet, because we absolutely celebrated Roy, and it was this huge rodeo reunion, and there were guys who walked up to me that I haven't seen in 25 years. I didn't even recognize them. And, they're like, hey, Kendra, I don't know how they recognize me, because I was just like, holy smokes. But, we all are so close out there, and then, okay, I just love doing this like this. Okay, here we go. So I hope you're joining us live where you can see these, pictures that will explain kind of what I'm talking about. So first stop when I get there is Sunday, the Wendy Ryan Memorial Roping in Saginaw, Texas, right there. So Roy, and whenever I've been to the Wendy Ryan, I went with Roy and sat in this box here. Well, there's Roy's box, okay? And when his Wendy Ryan days were over, he held court in that box, and generations of people were there. Just absolutely, so cool. To back up a moment, Roy was one of this year's Wendy Ryan Memorial Roping, which is this world famous event, had their inaugural class of Hall of Fame inductees this year, and Roy was one of them. And before we get to Sunday, Shad Mayfield won the roping, and then they had an 8-head match between Shad Mayfield and Riley Webb. And after 8 calves, it was tied So they did a 4-calf rope off, and Riley edged Shad by 1/10 of a second. I mean, that's just freaking cool. That picture that you're seeing right there, that's cool. Okay, that's Roy and Roy's box. Roy being Roy at the Wendy Ryan. And the back of that guy's head right there, this guy deserves a mention. Tim Ensley is the guy who put together the tribute video for Roy's service. And he used to live at Roy's. And a lot of people see him around these days, but they don't know the rope. And when we ended up at Cadillac, up the hill from the service the other night, there used to be a picture, I guess, of Tim roping on the wall before Cadillacs burned down. So anyway, that guy's a great, he's a cowboy and he's a great friend of cowboys. So Dan Fisher, great friend of Roy's. They did this really special, Kurt Robinson was the announcer, and, he spoke, but Dan led this gray horse out there. And it wasn't, how they'll do the riderless horse as a tribute to somebody. It wasn't just random cowboy gear here. It was the saddle Roy was riding, the rope and pig and string he used, and the hat on his head when he broke the $2 million mark. That's what was on this riderless horse. And if do we have a picture of that, Greg? Because I think Dan Fisher leading the riderless horse would be really cool for people to see. It was beautiful and so appropriate. I mean, Roy would have been so proud of that. So that image right there, I mean, it was very special. Anyway, and also there, and I think you have a picture of this, Greg, that was the guy, leading the riderless horse. And Sonny Silva, who's a bit and spur maker. Okay, there they are, old amigos and great friends of Roy's. That man on the right there, okay, Dan Fisher's got his sunglasses on. He roped that day in the steer roping. Sonny Silva, he had just made, at special request from Roy, spurs for each of his grandkids. And I'm told some of them were maybe lost in the fire, which is sad. But I just had seen a video of Roy presenting these cute little custom-made spurs to little True Fashion Cooper, Tough and Tiffany's little girl. And that's the kind of sweetness. There were 1,000 things, that Roy did. And so it was just vintage, classic Roy Cooper. Okay, so we get to Monday. By the way, Dan Fisher's son, J. Tom, won the steer roping at the Wendy Ryan. So congratulations to him on that. Roy's family and friends all gathered at his home away from home, Stockyards Hotel right there, right in front of the famous Fort Worth Stockyards sign where everybody take the pictures and stuff before the service. And they just started packing them into the Cowtown Coliseum. And it was the eclectic, diverse group of people that gathered for him. Actually, I want to pause. I want to take a step back to the Wendy Ryan for a moment, because this perfectly illustrates what I'm trying to say here. There, let's talk like at the Wendy Ryan. I run into my friend Slammer. I know Slammer from. He actually has a name. His name is Sean Caldwell, but everybody calls him Slammer. And I first met him at Roy's house. Well, every year for the last 11 years, Roy has had a custom buckle made, world champion calf untire. And
really?
Yes, Greg, give a picture of Slammer, and every year he gets a new one. And I talked to him at the Wendy Ryan, and he was showing me his buckle. It says 11-time world champion calf untire, and he was like, yeah, Roy didn't get me my buckle.
He got him one every year.
Every year.
Oh, there he is. There's the picture.
Years.
It was coming down the pipe.
There he is. Yeah, and I mean, that's how Roy made people's days. I promise you, every day when Slammer gets up, he puts that buckle, and he takes the untying, he gives it full effort every single time, and he's awesome, and he's everybody's friend. So, but I just feel like, they're George Strait and Slammer. Those are the kind of, friends of Roy Cooper. So Anyway, also though at the Wendy all weekend at the Wendy Ryan and at the memorial service, it was really fun. I hadn't seen Roy's little brother Clay Tom Cooper, who's an NFR calf roper, in a long time, and he's a colorful cowboy character, and he was known. I don't know if you can cue it up, Greg, the Clay Tom pulling his pistols video, and if you can, I will stop talking so people can hear it. Okay. I was just gonna say that like that was popular, like Luke Branquino's booty shake was popular. Like Clay Tom, when he pulled his pistols after a run, it was a winner. And so he had that flair, and he was laughing. He was telling stories.
Okay, there's a lot of controversy about me shooting those pistols and glad my dad not like him. The coolest thing is, one time Roy said, "Clay, Dad's not gonna like that." I said, "Roy, Dad's not roping."
Anyway, he talked about, the stories were just out of this world, this weekend, but that Betty Gill and Roy were just practicing fiends, and Clay Tom, he wasn't really much for it, but he had a good time, and he was very successful. So anyway, okay, so we have the program here from Roy's service, which was cool. I love that picture of him with his hands in the air on the front there, and then there was a messages on the back from his grandchildren. I thought that was a very sweet touch. And it shows you the speakers there, which I've got a copy right here that I'm looking at. But, there was a proclamation from Texas Ag Commissioner Sid Miller and Sonny Burgess. They showed his Cowboy Cool video, which is about Roy. And then I loved Blake Deckard. Everybody calls him Deck, and he was one of Roy's all-time favorites. He did some RC impersonations. He's really good at it. That was really fun. And Trevor Brazil, of course, Tanya Tucker and George Strait, but Ty Murray and Trevor Brazil, and a couple of Roy's kids, Cliff and Tuff spoke. I was gonna mention like the George part. He was telling he was actually very choked up, and he made it clear, which is true, that Roy was one of his absolute best friends and heroes, but he did have us all laughing because he was talking about when he and Roy went, in their suits to the All-American. They were asked to lead the All-American parade at Ruidoso, right, in New Mexico at the racetrack. And what's funny about this is when George told it at Roy's service, he said Roy asked him, "Do you want to race?" And when Roy told me the story years ago, he said George asked him if he wanted to race. So they both remember the other guy asking, but they also, the way both had it in their memory banks, they both kind of claimed victory. It was really close. I have a picture of it, and they're neck and neck for sure. But George at Roy's service, he said, "Okay, I'm finally going to admit it. Roy got me by a nose." And so it was his first mission of being beat. And he also mentioned that they were both banned from the racetrack. So so there was that. I thought it was neat when the service was over, just out of curiosity or whatever, they thought it would be fun to get a picture of all the world champions. So 34 world champions showed up for Roy, and that was a pretty cool. That's a pretty big gathering from different generations of world champions. A lot of gold buckles there, and so I'm going to mention a few words because Nerd Girl, of course, I had grabbed the little locked his keys in the truck when we got there, and so we were photo finishing it, but we did throw our stuff in the room, and I grabbed a little hotel notepad. So I wrote down just a couple little notes of what like Ty Murray and Trevor Brazil said that I thought were special. And There's a picture, if you've got it, Greg, of Trevor Brazile, Ty Murray, Phil Lyon, and Cody Ohl that would go perfectly with what I'm about to say. Quote Ty Murray. There it is. Isn't that special? I mean, that's cool. So Ty Murray said, Roy Cooper was the legend's legend. Joe Beaver, Fred Whitfield, and Cody Ohl included, and he roped calves that were as big as the bulls I rode. So, I mean, that is kind of true, right? I mean, that, it was fun to have there were tears and, people kind of choking on their words, but also some light moments because it's pretty, everybody had to end with something that had the word baby in it because Roy called everybody baby. Hey, baby, so that did kind of lighten the mood. So this is Trevor Brazile. Roy was a walking roping manual. There was nothing he did with a rope and a pig and string that was not perfection. I'll never be able to repay what Roy did for me. I was the Super Looper's sidekick. I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am today without the influence of Roy Cooper. So, I mean, there were a lot of, and those guys don't say things they don't mean. I just, when this first happened, the morning after I talked to Trevor and he just said, Roy was larger than life to me. And I remember Roy at the first time I ever met Trevor was this skinny little rookie, and he walked up to me at Reno and he goes, Roy says, I need to know you. That's the kind of connections that Roy made. So it was just another really special thing for me was, and I would love to show a picture for people who haven't, like me, seen him. Betty Gale, Roy's sister Betty Gale, died of cancer when her son Cooper Ratliff, there he is. That's baby Cooper. And that's him with Oatberry. And he was talking to me and he said, would it be okay if I called you? I said, I haven't seen you since you were 5. And the last time I talked to your mom, she was saying that you and her just kept hitting that cancer pillow, just beating on it, because that was your way of, getting it all out. And he said, the last memory I have of my mom, I walked in and I couldn't wake her up. And he said, I was really pretty little and I was wondering if I could get a hold of you after here and we could just talk about my mom. And I'm like, holy cow. Okay. So we need to make an effort as a rodeo family, all of us who are a little bit older and really knew Betty Gale, we need to get in touch with her kid, Cooper, who's a grown man dad now. And, tell him all the things we remember. She was awesome. I mean, what a competitor, but she was sweethearted, amazing. So another thing that has come that Clay Tom, just for another option on memorials for Roy, they are going to do a Roy Cooper Memorial Scholarship at Southeastern Oklahoma State in Durant, where both Betty Gale and Roy were superstars, and Betty Gale went on to coach there. So I'll put that information up, just to give people options or whatever. But I just, there's no way to hit every moment of what happened, but it was a beautiful send off for an absolute icon. And I think Roy would have been proud at the people who showed up for him, and he would have loved all the stories. And it was fitting that we walked up the hill to Cadillacs to finish the day and cap off the night. And there it is. And by the way, the drinks were on Roy, and that was just Roy, and so it was all beautiful. And he would have been touched, he would have been proud, and he would have been right in the middle of it, which I suppose he was in spirit, right? But it was a great day and it was a great evening. So I'm so happy that I got to be there.
Oh, thank you for bringing it to us. I think that's a wonderful thing. He was a showman in so many ways, right? And I think that you touched on the different pieces of him, and what a fitting way to celebrate, right? Memories and tears and smiles I think that's the right way most people want to be remembered. And and I, there's and Kendra, I don't expect you because you're closer to everybody than me, but there's all kinds of like there always is. All these families have their disputes, and there's all of the Facebook Vikings and warriors out there. And I decided I would dive in a little bit and see if I could find out kind of what all was going on. And here's the truth: we're called No Spin Rodeo. And as I started to look at this, I could find very little fact associated with all the drama. Some of you know what I'm talking about that have been on Facebook that's associated with Roy's passing. And I could find very little facts. And so I'm not going to spend time. We're not the Inquirer here. We're not going to get on it. I will mention a couple facts that are kind of spurring all of this controversy. It is true that Clint and his mom were not allowed into the service. Again, I understand that there were guards there and they weren't allowed in. And I think, and again, we'll wait for facts to come out in this case, but there is a document floating out there that looks to be a true document from July 13th, 2023, where Roy deeds his property to his ex-wife, 20-year ex-wife, Puff's mom, for $10. Now, I do have a copy of that. So that's the true document. Now, the contention is whether or not Roy signed it, whether there was a notary there. Again, until we have facts on this, but there's a lot of drama, and it's unfortunate. My point to this is it's unfortunate. And what I'm happy to hear, Kendra, is that in that moment that, the good thing, all of this drama was put aside in that moment with a couple circumstances being involved, for everybody to celebrate his life. So I think that's a good thing. And I did want to mention, we mentioned it earlier, and I think you've written about it. And I did notice that you probably couldn't see it on No Spin if you couldn't read it, unless you push us up to the big screen. You can do that. You can screen share and watch us on your television, in case you were wondering. You can Google that. And then you can probably see all the pictures. Kendra, I did notice that one whole page was written by you. So again, we don't take for granted the talent we have on No Spin, and congratulations on, your words are always paintings and they're very appreciated. Your written words go on in history. And so congratulations for being a part of that document. Anyway, Kay Gay, I did want to mention a shout out. We mentioned it earlier, but Kate Gay was also celebrated in Terrell, Texas at the Cowboy Church. This was Neil Gay's wife, Jim Gay's mother, stepmother to Donnie and Pete. And, here's what I thought was interesting. I did not attend, but Kenny Pettit, who's a friend of mine, did, and I got a report from him. Here's what I thought was interesting. Literally, more than you could count, flag carriers that were a part of her. I think it was called the Palomino Posse in Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, where she handmade all of their outfits that they wear at the stock show. Most of those ladies that rode for Kay as flag girls showed up to that funeral, and that again that's unique, right? And I think it's worth bringing up. And Kenny Pettit, who's known for some of his writings, but Kenny grew up on that ranch. And the one statement that I'll pull out of what he did was that Kay Gay had a heart, a soft gold heart and a spine of steel. And I can imagine that was the case, married to Neil Gay, raising Pete and Donnie. And Jim, those of you know Jim Gay, he's his own kind of, fiery, stand up, punch you in the nose, tell you like it is. Good friend of mine, by the way. No, but anyway, shout out to Kay and her service and her family. A family of champions, and she raised them. And I thought that's worth mentioning.
It is, and you talked about the flag girls. My daughter-in-law Jordan is not a flag girl, but she was Miss Rodeo America, and she just redid the office at her and Taylor's house in Stephenville. And I just was there, and there's this hat that I've never seen before hanging on her office wall, and it's covered in crystals. And I'm like, what is that? It's like a 25-pound hat. And it was from where she wrote in, like in the openings at the NFR, but it was part of the, all the flag girls. She was, they all are in that room down there in the tunnel and everything for the openings. But it's 100% bottom, top, brim, crown. The whole thing is covered in these heavy crystals. Seriously, like a 25-pound hat. I picked it up. I'm like, you put this on your head? And she's like, yes, that was part of it that year, Angie, the flag girl queen at the NFR. Anyway, yeah, this wildness. But the Fort Worth, those two gay girls, Jim's daughters, that handle all that at Fort Worth, every day they have, the classic outfits and all that. It's pageantry at its finest.
All that derived from Kay and her culture of beauty that she brought to the table. So I think that is really cool. Well, thank you, Kendra. That was really good. I wanted to, if you'll let me, end the show with a change. For those of you that don't know, this will be my part, what I bring to the show today. For contract personnel, so contract personnel in our sport, and I'm trying to flash everybody. That's really nice. Got to keep that thing buttoned up. For contract personnel, those are the support staff of rodeos, and there's the contestants and there's the livestock. But one of the key members of the whole entertainment package in rodeo is the contract personnel. And here's what I find interesting, because we're doing it in our household. My son's doing it. Everybody knows you're getting ready for summer. And I know the contestants do the same thing, but my attachment, or the people that I know, are the contract personnel, because you're getting ready to leave for 3 months, and you're getting ready to leave your home and move into your new home, which is your RV, for 3 months. And I thought it would be interesting. So I texted a few of these people. I thought it would be interesting to kind of share what some of these people do getting ready for the summer run. Are you up for that, Kendra?
Sure.
All right. So Matt Merritt, rodeo clown, entertainer, PBR final clown. Now, here's what he said. They have 2 rigs. He has his own rig, and his wife has another rig, and his daughter now has a specialty act. And so they're packing for. They've got a suitcase that is for their flying events. They're going to go for a couple weeks in Florida to have vacation before they go, and then they split off in 2 campers and go on the rodeo run. I reached out to Anthony, my brother. Everybody knows Anthony, and I said, anything special you do? Now, I can remember the time when Anthony and Dominic and I, we had to get the pins cleaned and the wash turned off and everything loaded into the trailer with Dad. And you picked out, you only, in an RV, you only have a very small amount of space that's yours. So you got to be really critical what you take with you on the road. And Anthony said he spends most of his time making sure that the trailer's good for Lisa, so that nothing breaks down while he's gone. Matt Tarr, I thought this one was interesting. He said, look, my wife does most of the stuff, but they go through all the kids' clothes and they give away. This is their time to give away everything that they've grown out of, give away all the toys, because it all won't go into the trailer. And he said, I spend my time, which I chuckled, making sure that the RV, and by the way, Justin Rumford said this. Both of these guys said this. We get a spare RV pump. So if you've lived in an RV, the pump pumps your water and they go out. And so you have a spare RV pump because you need to be able to have water running, a set of brake shoes, check the axles, grease. The man's job is to make sure that home goes down the road and doesn't break down. And that when you get there and you find a plug-in and you plug in and all of us, contestants and everybody alike, know that, well, now they have generators, but, finding the plug-in, back in my day, finding the plug-in was like you got onto the fairgrounds and everybody was on a search for a plug, right? Well, now there's generators and that's nice. But I thought it was interesting. The kids, like Matt said, the kids are in charge. They get to pick a handful of items that they get to take with them for the whole summer, and they're gone for 3 months. Justin Rumford, of course, Justin is a hoot, and I like Justin. So I'm going to read most of his because I thought it was interesting. It's very Justin-like. We haul a 40-foot trailer. Still not enough room. We have to pack for all weather. Big portable closets in the back of the trailer. The girls, he's got the whole set of girls in his family, his daughters. The girls share bunk beds and sleep on the couch, and all the activities have to be for outside. Bikes, scooters, all of that stuff. We got to figure out how to strap it on. All of the girls have their own TV so they don't fight in the afternoons when it's super hot and they're cooped up in the RV. And thank God for Starlink, the Starlink Mini. Chase bought one. Now all of us rodeo people can throw that Starlink Mini out and get on internet. And Rump said, the other thing that's a real pain is he's got to pack good clothes for banquets and stuff. And now, because food's become so high, all of these guys are telling us they're trying to, pack a lot of food so that they don't eat out and spend all their money on a $20 McDonald's breakfast. Rump said, and of course, a spare propane tank. And some RV parts, he says, like I said, the water pump, the power converter, the slide out motor. So you got slide outs. Like these are real world problems for us. If your slide doesn't go out when you push the button, you've got a problem because you can't get from one part of your house to the other. So Rump hauls in a slide motor and of course fuses, all that stuff. So I just thought it was interesting. I'm trying to figure out. Josh Hilton's one was, well, we do a lot of praying and a lot of arguing about what goes on. They also have to figure out, and this, Kendra, who takes care of the home base, right? You got to find someone. We have to do this when we go to Utah. Who feeds your animals and stuff at home while you're gone all summer, and who can you trust to do that? And working out the logistics of all of that. So this is the time of year, though. This is that time. My son Chase is calling me. He just bought an RV. Oh, Dad, I've got my toolbox, and what do I need to do? And I'm like, well, did you grease the hubs and check the brakes and tell your wife that she can't take everything in the closet because it can't fit? And so anyway, I think that's an interesting twist on what we all do. Now, Anthony says he does it in March because he goes out to Reno's run, out there in your country. He's out there. He does a little earlier. But most people in May, of us contractors, are figuring out how we get the family into a rolling box and on the road for 3 months. So I thought that was kind of interesting, a little different take on what everybody does to get ready. Have you ever had to do that, Kendra?
Well, yes, I had my years of motorhoming to junior high, high school, college rodeos, junior rodeos, with Lane and Taylor, and kids like Cody Snow and different people, and we had a ball. And you have your just a few little cupboards, and you make do. But the traveling light thing's never been a problem for me. I don't check bags, so I travel very, very light, and I'm a minimalist on the travel, what I take along. And my mom, incidentally, lives on a 3-story houseboat. So if she takes something new on, she gets rid of something else. She's like, oh, because if she gets like too many things that then her boat starts to list. So she keeps it pretty. It's true. Like a bookshelf fell because it was starting to lean a little bit, and it already will bounce if the weather's intense. So anyway, yes, I mean it's the same difference, right? Packing up, you got to live within your space. What's your space? So, but I found when in the motorhome living, we had a ball. But my big thing about that, because it was so tiny and there were always so many teenage boys, is I had to clean the bathroom like 10 times a day to keep it spotless. Otherwise, it would just make me crazy. But besides that, we had a ball. I thought it was the best time.
Well, you learn how to, because now when I grew up, I was in a camper. It was a small camper that sat on the truck, and the toilet and the shower and the sink and everything was in one 3x3 area. So you could take care of all your business, shower, brush your teeth. Like you did everything and didn't turn around, really. You just sat there on the toilet, took a shower. That's growing up old school RVing. And still, I prefer to you can ask Donna, I prefer to sleep in an RV at a motel room any day. And I didn't want to leave out because I forgot him. Scott Grover, I reached out to Scott Grover, PBR and Pro Rodeo announcer, great friend of mine. he's got a big bus and a big family. Consequently, he got thrown off of his horse. He was announcing horseback, got thrown off of his horse, broke his collarbone. So if you think that the announcers can't get hurt, you're wrong. But so his big ordeal now is he can't drive the bus because he's having surgery on his collarbone. So they got to find a driver for the bus. And the things that I thought in his little list, makeup, because his son fights mutton busting, is a clown. So he's got to have the makeup in there. So when he's a mutton buster, and they play hockey, so they got hockey sticks. So just all of you that sit at home and don't go on the road, imagine loading up your family and everything they want to do and going from fairgrounds to fairgrounds to rodeo grounds to rodeo grounds and trying to not interrupt their life. So I just think that's a cool, different part of this business that I wanted to talk about today as we reminisce on Roy and his family and praying for their family and everything that's going on. Hopefully all that works out, and to the Gay family. And thank you, Kendra, for bringing that to us. It's very special. And thank you, Greg, for switching this show in Santa Maria. And thank all of you for listening and watching. If you haven't watched, you got to see these pictures. The pictures that Kendra brings to the game are real. You don't get to see them anywhere else. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode 60 of No Spin Rodeo. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Kendra, for such a wonderful, wonderful tribute and bringing us right there into Cowtown for that. Thank you, Greg, for being a part of the show. Thank you, all of you, for listening to the podcast and for watching us live. Until next week, I'm Tommy Joe Lucia, the First Lady of Pro Rodeo Journalism, Kendra Santos and Greg Teagarden. You guys be safe. Have a blessed day. We'll see you next week.